Welcome to the Therapeutic Food Solutions podcast. I'm your host, Marian Mitchell. I'm an integrative nutrition health coach, therapeutic diet expert, and founder of The Road to Living Whole. There are many different diets out there. It's hard to know which one is right for you with your chronic illness and autoimmune disease. In this podcast, I'm going to share with you the foundational pieces every single therapeutic diet out there shares, and also how to use the best one for your particular diagnosis. If you've been looking for a meal planning partner, help navigating the complicated healthcare system, and want to feel better quickly, I'm your girl. Grab your kombucha and notebook. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited for today's guest. It's going to be a really interesting topic. We're going to be talking about perimenopause, menopause, but also what we can do before then to make that big life change happen so much easier. And it's from a male perspective, which I think a lot of us women are like, oh, what does a guy know? So they can know a lot. And I think that they, because they don't necessarily go through it, they're on the other side, they're able to be a little bit more objective. And so I'm really excited to talk to Joe, and I'm excited to learn right along with you what he knows. I'm in the thick of it. I'm 40 this year, and things are changing despite health and lifestyle. And so I'm really excited to just dive into this topic and, learn what he knows. So Joe, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you.
You got it. Super happy to be here. And yeah, I mean, what you said in the beginning is oftentimes where the pitchforks come out. Is like, okay, you have me at talking perimenopause, you have me at talking menopause, you have me at figuring out what to do so this is all enjoyable. But wait a minute, you just lost me when you said a guy is doing it. And then I lose them even more. And I'm like, hey, by the way, I'm not just like a guy that's maybe around that age. I'm 30. I'm 31. So that's always like a wait a minute, what is this guy doing? Why is he here? And for the longest time, I had so many people be like, he's got to be here for the money, right? Like there's so much money in this space. He's got to be here for the money. And it's like, well, if you would take a second and kind of like understand where I'm coming from, you might change your mind. But yeah, like I'm absolutely not. And it's just something I love doing because watching these ladies shift in their quality of life is priceless.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. How did you come into this space? You are young. Menopause, women are 10, 15, 20, 30 years older than you. So how did you even come to this space where this was a passion for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a couple, probably like three clients in their 70s right now. And then clients as young as like 26 is their youngest, but mostly they're like mid 40s, early 50s. And it all started back when I was 13 years old. Growing up, my mom was my strongest, most consistent role model. Technically, I'm an only child, but I had two stepbrothers, and sometimes they're at my mom's house, and sometimes they were at their mom's house. And so a lot of times, like it was just me and my mom spending a lot of time together. So she shaped me, and I spent a lot of time with her friends, and I think that shaped me growing up quite a bit. But at the age of 13, she realized two things. Number one, my son is starting to go down the wrong path and do some pretty dumb shit that's not going to help him later in life. And at the same time, like, oh, he just hit puberty. He sprung up a ton. He didn't gain a ton of weight with it. So he's tall, he's skinny, he's awkward. I also wasn't that smart or great at school. Like I didn't have that much going for me on paper. And so kids started to realize that and they started to pick on me. And so with those two things being true, she'd always been into the gym and she's like, hey, Joe, I'd love it if you came to the gym with me one night this week after you get your homework done and I'm home and we've had dinner. I was like, sure, mom, I'd love to. Because what I think is all the guys at the gym have what I want, right? They have the muscles, they have the confidence, their chest is up, they're looking people in the eye. And I wasn't doing any of that. And so I was like, yeah, I'd love to go. From day one, I fell in love with it. And I went religiously from then to 18. I never gained much weight. I gained maybe 5 to 10 pounds. So it didn't change me getting picked on. It didn't change my mental health that much. But what it did do is it redirected me from the bad path I was going down, the bad choices I was making, and it gave me a different trajectory, which was priceless. Because if I didn't, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation. I promise that. So now I'm 18, still getting picked on. I graduate high school, I go into college and start pursuing a career in the medical field. And now I'm taking courses in anatomy, physiology, kinesiology, and figuring out how the body works in response to different levels of stimuli. And so I become my first guinea pig and I start applying everything I know that works across the board for 99% of people. But at the same time, I'm 18 and I'm away at college and I start drinking and partying and eating pizza after drinking and sleeping poorly after eating pizza and drinking. And so, yes, I'm in the gym lifting in a calorie surplus, gaining some muscle, but I'm gaining weight way too fast to have it be only muscle. And so, in the span of like a year to a year and a half, I gain 80 pounds and I go from 145 up to 225. And so, with my height, if you look at those two numbers on like a BMI chart, I literally went from underweight to obese in a year. And so now I had a new problem. Like, still didn't have confidence, still wasn't great at much. I was just fat instead of skinny. And I still didn't love myself. So I kicked the partying, I dialed in everything I knew to be true. And then I got to where I wanted to be. Like I reached the body I wanted. And with that came the confidence I wanted. And people saw that, right? They knew me from being in a small town. They were like, look, Joe's like kind of quiet, kind of sheepish, doesn't look people in the eye, still doesn't do it when he's fat. But now he comes back and like, who the hell is this guy? He's funny. He's looking us in the eye. He's fun to be around. He looks great. And I had enough people ask me, be like, Joe, how did you do that? Like, can you teach me? And I've always kind of been business oriented. So enough people asked, and I had this light bulb moment. I was like, yeah, okay, got it. Like, this was fun for me. I want to help people avoid this pain. I'm going to make some money doing this. So, you know what? Maybe it was about the money in the beginning, partially. And so enough people asked, and I was like, sure, I'm going to help people like me, young men, either lose fat or gain muscle and feel great with their shirt off and feel confident because I didn't, and it sucked. And so I start running these 8-week fat loss challenges online. And I start getting a ton of signups just by telling people about it, just by people asking. But I never looked at the names of who was signing up. And on day one, when I open my computer and I open Zoom and everybody's looking back at me, I look at those faces as soon as I'm about to kick it off. And nobody looks like me. They all look like my mom. And I was like, oh, shoot. Like, how did this work? But what I came to realize is, again, like going back to my very first sentence, I grew up with my mom as my strongest, most consistent role model. And I spent time with her and her friends, and I learned to communicate in a way that resonates with them. And so naturally, I think I attracted them. And at the end of that first call, we all had fun. We were all laughing. Everybody was feeling pretty confident and safe. At the end of the first 8 weeks, everybody got results. And I was like, well, shoot, I don't really care if this is what I was after or not. This is fun and it's fulfilling. So this is what I'm doing. But at the same time, I was giving away, it was a $500 cash prize at the time to whoever made the biggest transformation in 8 weeks. And I wasn't getting enough signups to make money off that. So I'd get like 300, 400, 450 bucks in sales. And then I would give away 500 and I would lose money. So I had to have my job in surgery. I graduated college, got my job in surgery. My role was to basically help the doctor before the procedure, set up the operating room sterilely, and then during the procedure, help him or her with the procedure and basically do anything they couldn't do with their own two hands. Again, like fate, the universe, God, you name it, getting pushed in this direction. It was me and 7 other girls on the surgical team that had my role. And my higher ups looked at me one day and like looked at the team, and we were trying to figure out a plan. And they're like, Joe, we've got it. I think we're going to stick you in the OB in the GYN based rooms. And I was like, you're kidding me, right? Like the one guy, you're putting me here. And so they did. And for like the next, God, it was like 2.5 to 3.5 years, I spent 40 hours a week plus on-call emergency surgery working on the female body, learning the female body, spending time with these doctors shoulder to shoulder for 8 hours a day, asking them questions, being like, hey, doc, what could this lady have done proactively so that she's not in the table in front of us? And they thought I was being a great worker. It's kind of true. But at the same time, I was stealing that knowledge and bringing it back to my clients and being like, guys, this is what I learned. This is how to apply it. This is what we're going to do. This is what you're not going to experience. And that's it. Like fast forward 7 years, I love it. It's what I've dedicated almost the past decade to. Makes me super happy, and we've gotten pretty damn good at it at this point.
I love that. So my uncle is an OBGYN. He now
Love it.
is he now works as a hospital over the labor and delivery department catching babies. He's always loved it. And he was more of like the midwife. Like he's in rural Nebraska, Idaho. So he would be driving to people's homes and laying on the ground with a flashlight, catching babies. And he's always just really had a passion for that. And so I've in my experience, the male doctors have been better than the female doctors. So I think that maybe that helps with my perspective a lot. I think a lot of people tend to get nervous about guys being in their space, but I found them to be the most compassionate and the most caring, and they listen because they don't have their own assumptions, right? I think that that gives you a lot of credibility, especially in my mind. And so I'm really excited to dive in. What have you learned? What do you know? And me being 40, being in perimenopause and my own health, like I was telling you beforehand, in 2022, I went from 125 pounds and a size two, like no change in diet, no change in working out. All of a sudden, in 3 months, I gained 20 pounds, right? And my testosterone, and
Mhm.
finally, I'm doing all the things, and finally I get some blood work done and I have like no testosterone. We did a little bit to try to jumpstart that. And then like here I am, then I got pregnant and now here I am still 20 pounds heavier. It's really hard to lose it and it's really frustrating. And so, I would love to hear what you know and what you teach and just discuss that.
I love it. Yeah. We should also just talk afterwards and see what
Yeah.
I can apply for you because I think it'd be interesting. But like you and I said before, like yes, you very clearly had a hormone issue, and we can get into my own here in a second. But even though I've worked in this space for 7 years, perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, even though I hosted the Midlife Makeover Summit, which to date is like the largest health event for women 40 plus, I'm not the hormone guy, right?
Mm,
And so I'll never act like it. I'll never lie to people and say that I am. What I am is the guy that has found that the foundational approaches that work pretty much across the board will most of the time do one of two things. Number one, debunk the fact that somebody doesn't in fact have a hormone issue if they were pointing the finger at it and speculating. Or number two, if they're right, which somebody listening absolutely could be, a lot of times that fixes it, right? And
mhm.
and for you, Marian, like it didn't,
Right.
right? But for many, it does. And so we're looking at nutrition, we're looking at exercise, we're looking at sleep, stress mitigation, and mindset to ultimately change the physiology inside somebody's body, which is simple. It's boring. I think as humans, we don't like boring, right? Like if something's too easy, we're like, you know what? It's working, but it's easy. And so if it's working and it's easy, if I work harder, it's got to work better. And a lot of the times, that's simply not the case. And so
Yeah.
why so many people struggle is because they have a hard time grasping that. And I raised my hand in this video showing you that like that was me too, and it still is today in certain aspects of my life. But boring works.
Yeah. In my clinical experience, diet and lifestyle and stress mitigation, all those things do resolve, I would say 80 to 90% of the problem. And then if there is, fire somewhere, it clears the smoke so you can see it.
Yes.
So, you and I are right there. We're the boots on the ground helping people figure this out. So let's talk about it. What do you know? What is this easy stuff that people just don't want to accept?
Yeah. So the easy stuff that people don't want to accept for the women that a lot of times will come to me is the fact that you got to eat more food, right? And that is a terrifying thing to say to a woman that is 40, 50, or 60 years old because they grew up in the Weight Watchers era or the Atkins era or whatever it is. But like thinking that you have to eat a very small amount of food and that's the correct way to eat and fuel your body when it's just simply not true. And so the analogy I like to use is I used to have a border collie. She was 2.5 years old and she came up just below my knee. She was 42 pounds. In being who I am, like the nerd about nutrition and people and beings fundamentally being as healthy as possible. I was like, wow, well, I have this little puppy and it's all on me to make sure she's as healthy as possible. I'm going to figure out how much food she needs. And growing up, that changed, obviously. But when she reached her full size, 42 pounds just below my knee, her daily calorie intake was 1,200 calories a day. And so, what I like to tell a lot of the women that I work with, because they'll come to me eating 1,200 calories, I'm like, hey, guess what? You're eating as much as my dog did. And you don't look like you're 42 inches tall. I mean, 42 pounds. And you also look like you're a little taller than my knee height. And so, if those two things are true, you got to eat more food. So that's number one is if somebody wants to get going on this, like track how much you're eating for the next 3 days, everything you eat and drink, average it out, figure out how much you're eating. And if it's, God, I would say below 1,600, usually even more, usually like 18, 19 or 2,000 calories. If it's below that, you got to eat more food, right? That's number one place to start.
That's super scary for a lot of people.
Yes.
Especially right now with the GLP-1s and all of that, and they're eating, 600 or 700 calories a day because that's all they can stomach. And then they get off of them and their weight starts climbing again. And I want to talk about that just because I'm in the thick of it. I'm dealing with a lot of people that are coming off of them and they're like, I lost all this weight and now I'm gaining it back. And we have to figure that out, right? But yeah, I remember distinctly in my 20s, I was working out with multiple trainers. It was like, kind of at a gym. So they would kind of cycle out and move on. And my third trainer, he sits down with me one day because I hadn't been really gaining a lot of muscle. And so he's like, what are you eating? And so we did the log and I was eating about 1,400 calories a day. He's like, for how active you are. And I'm petite. I'm, 5 3/4 of an inch. I round up to 5'1". He was like, you need 1,800 calories a day, which I had gotten to the weight that I was by my trainers telling me to eat 1,200 calories a day. So I was like, all right, I'll try it. And I gained like probably 5 pounds of muscle, over the next few months just by eating more. And it was, whole foods, lots of protein, lots of vegetables, fruit, all of that. And it was completely and totally mind blowing. And people, come to me for weight loss. And I'm like, we're not counting calories. We're just going to focus on eating real food. It's really hard to overeat when you're eating real food. Like, let's just focus on making sure you're getting the protein that you need. And half of your plate is vegetables and there's a healthy fat on there. They end up eating more, losing weight. So, I'm right there. I'm right there with you. It is, but it's so scary. And I would say that is probably one of my biggest challenges is getting people to eat more.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love that story. And it's one that we've seen a million times is they come in eating, you name it, like 700 to 13 or 1,400 calories. We bring them up to anywhere from like 1,900 to 2,500. It's like, wow, I feel better and I'm sleeping better and my sex drive is up and my body is shaped differently in the best way possible. And like, I don't have brain fog. It's like, wow, it's crazy what happens when you give your body food. Um, God, you mentioned Ozempic and that's a tricky one, right? Because I think that we've literally opened Pandora's box because it's not going anywhere at this point. Like,
Right.
it's here. 1 in 10 women, that's a stat I heard. If it's true, I don't know, but it's a stat I heard. So go get mad at me or research it and tell me I'm wrong. That's fine. I love learning. But 1 in 10 women are on it. And so if we're not going to get rid of it, the people like you and I that want the best for people, we got to learn how to deal with it and work with it.
Yeah.
And what I find is, I mean, you just told me you have so many ladies coming to you that are like, hey, I did so good on Ozempic, but now I'm off and now I'm gaining it back. How can this happen? And what I think the core problem is Ozempic's just like a diet, right? Like at the core of what it's doing, it's taking away your hunger. It's curbing cravings. But what it's not doing is changing your thoughts, your actions, your behaviors, your identity. And so, well, guess what? That's who you are at the core. And so when you stop the thing that created the results, you're left with who you are. And who you are got what you had. So you're naturally going to go back to where you were. So that I think that's what we need to focus on for those kinds of ladies, among other things, but I think that's a big piece.
Yeah. Identity is really big. So I'm in the chronic illness world, and a lot of people kind of take their diagnosis and make that who they are. That's a huge roadblock to healing because if they're not an MS warrior, then who are they? Right? Like they lose a huge part of who they are. And then same with diet culture. Like it's okay, I'm going to do this, whole 30, but then I'm going to go back to eating and drinking and doing all the things that I was before and gaining it back. And there's just this big yo-yo thing versus like when I'm working with people on GLP-1s, I'm like, hey, this is a tool, right?
Mhm.
This is helping you know what it's like to feel hungry, know what it's like to not feel hungry. I'm like, but it, we have to make sure we're during this time taking advantage of the tool and using it to transform the way that you grocery shop and your cooking and your meal planning. And you really got to hit the weight so we're not losing a bunch of muscle, because you're going to lose muscle, so we need to try to mitigate that as much as possible. And if you eat this way, when you transition off of it, you shouldn't gain it back. In fact, you should probably gain more muscle. So don't be scared of the scale, but let's look
Mhm.
at how your body's changing and things like that. But yeah, where it does help is also keeping the blood sugar stable. I do think that, and that's how they started, right? Was for diabetics that were resistant to metformin, or metformin made them too sick. And so I think that what it's doing by keeping blood sugar stable is it's helping mitigate inflammation and also helping ghrelin and leptin reset. So, if we're going to say, okay, before doing that, when you're not majorly obese and diabetic, what are these boring foundational things that we know work?
I mean, you mentioned a big thing there, and I don't know if people caught it, but you said muscle loss. And and I mean, we're talking specifically right now about definitely women over 30, but more specifically women 40, 50, 60 plus. And in the foundational things, absolutely need to combat that because at 30, you've started losing muscle year after year at a small rate. At 40, as a female, you're losing muscle mass on your body naturally at a rate of 1% year after year. A decade later at 50, that doubles and now it goes to 2%. And a decade after that, that doubles and now it's at 4% year after year. So you basically have this negative compounding interest of muscle loss. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason that that's important is because muscle is the thing that gives you the ability to eat a decent amount of food. And
Yeah.
with none, you're now forced to eat that 1,000, 1,200, 1,400 calories a day. But now, if you're eating that, it's not causing weight loss. It's simply allowing you to maintain your weight. And anytime you splurge, AKA act like a normal human and treat yourself with something tasty, you're over your calories. And if you do it too much, you're going to gain weight. And that's why it gets so tricky for women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, like the foundational stuff for that is going to be strength training, right? Not doing too much of it. We're not going to go kill ourselves in the gym 5, 6, 7 days a week. Maybe we go 2, 3, or 4. 5 is acceptable if you're allowing for recovery, but like we're pushing it. We're going to eat appropriate amounts of food. We're going to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. We're going to not be controlled by our phone, which controls our emotions and our thoughts in a negative aspect. We're basically going to do everything we would tell our kids to do. Big surprise.
Right. So let's talk about sleep and stress mitigation, because those are huge. And here I am. I have a teenager and a 1 year old, and both of them keep me up at night. And so, and when we're in this sandwich generation, we also have aging parents, right? My mother-in-law's
Mhm.
in her mid 70s now. And so there's like, we have a lot going on. And so sleep is hard and stress is through the roof. So, why are they so important? And what are some strategies to help improve them? And I think knowledge is power. So, just knowing why is a huge part, but knowing why and doing it are two completely different things.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more, right? Because knowledge for me is absolutely power. Because if somebody tells me to go do something and they don't explain why, which is like probably why I've gone off on these long tangents explaining why we need to do it, I'm just not going to do it. Like if somebody's like, Joe, go do this, I'm not telling you why. They're going to get the middle
Yep.
finger. Like I'm just not going to do it. But if I understand that it's going to help me or somebody in XYZ reason, oh my God, I'll do it all day long. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So why do we sleep? Why do we mitigate stress? Well, stress is cortisol, our hormone. As we age, women specifically, and you get into perimenopause, menopause, or postmenopause, you're more susceptible to being being controlled by cortisol, right? And I mean that in terms of like weight loss or actually weight loss resistance. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you have high cortisol levels around the clock, well, it's going to make weight loss a whole lot harder. And then when we look at the sleep conversation, if you are losing weight, but you're getting really poor sleep, and poor can be defined by quantity or quality. Well, guess what? They've done studies on this over and over, and it shows that, you know what, sleep's really not going to affect how much weight you lose. It's just not. But what it is going to affect is what type of weight you lose. And so if you're getting high quantity, high quality sleep, you're going to hang on to your muscle and you're going to lose your fat. But if you're getting crappy sleep across the board, well, guess what? You're still losing weight. You're just hanging on to fat and you're now getting rid of muscle, something we already just explained that you're already losing naturally. And so just to paint a picture of how ugly this can get, it's like you're 30, 40, 50, 60. We know you're losing muscle naturally. Now you're under eating, so you're losing muscle there. Now you're doing cardio instead of strength training, so you're losing muscle there. Now you're overtraining, so you're losing more muscle. Now you're sleeping like crap, so you're losing more muscle. And your stress is high, so weight loss isn't even happening.
Yeah.
Like that's a bad place to be in, which is kind of why I'm here, because I don't want to see that happen, and it's just far too common.
Yeah. So and also high cortisol makes it impossible to sleep. You're on high alert all the time, right? So it's like this negative cycle. So if someone's in this place, what are their foundational places that they start?
Yeah. Okay. So if anybody wants to go deeper on what I'm going to say, I have a quiz that you take. It's called Fix Your Fat Loss. Yes, the quiz is free. It takes 60 seconds. Depending on your outcome, it'll recommend you a 7-day challenge, and it's going to go over everything I would do for anybody starting tomorrow. But what we need to do is we need to get a handle on what our calorie intake is, right? So go download MyFitnessPal, go download Chronometer, do not pay for it, just use the free version and track what you're putting in your mouth for 72 hours. Average that out, like we said, figure out what you're eating. From there, go online and type in the words TDEE calculator. Make sure you find a free one. Again, none of this should cost you money, and figure out how much you should be eating as a rough estimate for your body. Okay, now compare those two. If you're currently eating more than the calculator gave you, well, guess what? If you want to lose weight, let's drop your calories down a bit and pay attention to keeping protein high. But if you're eating less than that and you're still not happy with your weight, your body composition, the way you feel, we got to get you up to that number at the very least. That's what we do for nutrition. Again, I mentioned protein. Like as a start, let's start aiming for above 100 grams a day. Okay. If you
That's where
don't
I
hit it,
start
it's
people
okay to
too.
not be perfect. Yeah, I think it's a good place to start, and then we can go from there. But that's a substantial enough amount to where like it's going to do something. Actually, a lot of some things.
Yeah.
Um,
Women
from
historically
there,
undereat it dramatically. I'd say
oh
the
yeah,
average woman is eating anywhere from 50 to 70 grams a day, which is so much in the deficit. Like that's not even enough to keep your cells turning over and healing from wounds and all of
yeah,
that stuff. Yeah.
we're in complete agreement because I was going to say 60, which is the average of what you just said. I love it. From there, let's get in the gym, right? And so, what we need to understand about the gym and exercise as a whole is exercise is actually making you worse. It's stressing your body out. And again, going back to that cortisol conversation, it's not helpful.
Mhm.
The way that exercise is helpful is that when we pair it with recovery, we get better. And so here's what happens. If we're strength training, for instance, what happens when we pick up a weight or use our body weight multiple times or repetitively for air squats, for back squats, for bicep curls? We're using that muscle and we're breaking it down microscopically. And so if we look at what I just said, we're literally breaking our body down when we exercise. Well,
Mhm.
that's not good. The only reason that it becomes good is that when we sleep, okay, so there's that sleep conversation. When we sleep, we get to repair. And not only do we repair back to what we repair 1% better than we were. And so exercise is only good if you can get adequate recovery, which is why I'm not recommending 5, 6, 7 days of exercise. I'm just keeping it simple, 2, 3, 4 days, up to an hour long. You're going to kill it. And let's lift some weights or at least use resistance. And the cool thing is we have resistance with us all the time. So if you're afraid of the gym, if you don't like the gym, if you have nothing at home, you have gravity and you have your body. And that's an amazing place to start. From there, the sleep conversation comes back, the stress mitigation. A good one for stress mitigation is like, I'm never a fan of taking things away from people. Oftentimes, I'm a fan of changing how they do it. And so a big one is like your morning coffee. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to take it away because trust me, I have my espresso machine here to my left and you took it from me, I'd be really, really mad. But what I'm going to do is tell you to eat some food before you have your coffee. And
Mm-hmm.
again, it's going to stabilize your cortisol levels, making everything easier. And that's it. Like when I say eat something, we don't need to start big. We don't need a full breakfast if you're not a breakfast lady right now. Go have an egg, go have some berries, like just something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great place to start. If somebody started with all those, they'd be in a really good place.
Yeah. I was also telling you this story before. I have a friend who's in a running club. She was the youngest, all these women. And so as she started going through menopause, they were saying that for them, menopause was nothing. They didn't feel it. They didn't have the weight gain. They didn't have the sleep problems. They didn't have the sex problems. It was just kind of like a blip and then it was over. I think people really discount how effective the basics are, right? But mostly being active. We live in America as a whole is extremely sedentary. And it starts with school with our kids, but then a lot of jobs are, sitting all the time and you're working 8 to 5, 8 to 6. There's not a lot of time for working out. And I think people really underestimate how effective 20 minutes a day can be when it comes to strength training. A lot of people, I grew up in this way, like through college, I worked out an hour and a half to 2 hours, mostly doing cardio, 6, 7 days a week in an attempt to be thin. And I was, but it was more like skinny fat.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until I was after I had my first son and I got into strength training that I was fit and toned and all of that. What I think people also don't realize is you're never too late.
No.
I cannot remember her name, but she's a Black lady who was like in her she was like in her early 70s and decided to start working out. Like I think her grandson took her to the gym and now she does like fitness competitions and she's like super strong. So it's never too late. But let's talk about prevention. So let's talk about these women that are in their, I have so many clients in their late 20s that are really struggling. Their gut is a mess, their hormones are a mess, they're dealing with hypothyroidism, which I have seen reversed with lifestyle mitigation strategies, which I think is fantastic. But let's talk about preventions when we're older, like I'm 40 and I don't look 40. Everybody thinks I'm in my mid 20s. And I really
Yeah,
do.
you don't at all.
Thank you. And I really, really do believe that that's diet and lifestyle that I started from the time that I was like 17, right? I've never been a super heavy drinker, never got into like hard partying, always taking care of myself, always kind of chased health. And I really do think that that pays off, even with some of the stuff that I've dealt with health wise and all of that. But if you're in your late 20s to mid 30s, when you're that window, what are the things that we need to do to make the next chapter that much better? And a lot of, I would say in my late 20s, I wasn't thinking about 40. I wasn't thinking about menopause or perimenopause. Like
Yeah.
I just wanted to be thin. I wanted to feel good. I had cystic acne and I had ovarian cysts that were bursting and I had, like all these things. And I just wanted to feel good. But in the process, it has made everything so much better. Right. But so if we're talking that window, what do women, men too, but what do women need to do?
Yeah. God, I have so many thoughts about what you just said. And I'll try to articulate all of them, but I'm sure I'll miss a couple. So, number one, before I get into this, like some of us are just dealt bad cards, right? And it doesn't matter how perfect you are, some shit's going to happen, right? But with that being true, we still can do everything in our power to prevent it. And I recommend that everyone does that. So again, just because I have so much experience with my older ladies, like what I'll hear so many times is what I used to do when I was in my 20s or 30s no longer works.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is, what you used to do also didn't work for your actual desired outcome. Maybe for the outcome that you think you want, AKA a number on the scale, but for your true outcome of looking good, feeling good, having longevity, and being functional today and into your 80s, it didn't work, right?
Right.
Because what causes muscle loss and all this shit in ladies that are 40, 50, and 60 does the same thing to women in their 20s and 30s. It
Mm-hmm.
just hasn't caught up with you yet. right? And
I always
so,
say they're living on their youth. You're living on your stores, you know, the
yeah,
nutrition
like
stores and your ability to recover faster.
exactly. And the muscle, because they
Mhm.
still have it. But
Right.
like as you do the diets, you're losing it little by little, and you never realize until you open your eyes 10, 20 years later, and you're like, oh shit, like that's what happened. But again, like if somebody wants to know what to do in your 20s and 30s, rewind this podcast 10 minutes and listen to what I just said, because
Yeah.
it's the same thing.
Isn't it funny? It's like this, it is. There's no like magic pill, there's no special diet, you know, and I specialize in therapeutic diets, right? But those are for
Mhm.
very particular cases. And I always transition people back to the basics. You know, I find with women, and I want to go back to nutrition because that's my favorite thing to talk about, that 100 grams of protein, right?
Huge.
Like women, I think what I find is they say it's just I'm so full it makes me nauseous, right? And I actually don't think it's physical. I think it has to do with the mental thought that I'm doing something that's going to make me fat,
Hmm.
or that they've just been, it's so ingrained that it's not good for you to eat that much meat, quote unquote, that they make
Hmm.
themselves sick, right? But what I find is if you know, if we build up to it and we sustain it, that all that brain fog, all those hormones, all those things start balancing out, right? They start feeling better, they start sleeping better. And protein is rich in, like, you know, tryptophan and things like that that help you sleep, but they're also really rich in minerals. And
Hmm.
we're so mineral depleted from all the dieting that replenishing those does wonders. But it's so scary for women. For And then let's talk about working out and bulking. A lot of women think that if they lift heavy that they're going to look like bodybuilders, and I used to have that fear too. I got over it pretty quick. I was in my mid 30s when I got over it and realized that it made me look really toned and really hot in
Yeah.
dresses and stuff. But I think that a lot of women, you know, especially as we age, because we're losing muscle and we have so much more of a difficult time building muscle, which is what I'm running into. Lifting heavy is really scary because, oh, I don't want to look like I don't want to look like a bodybuilder.
Hmm. Yeah. My God, so many thoughts. I've never considered the thought that the fullness is a mental fullness rather than a physical one. I'm not saying you're wrong. It certainly could be. I just haven't considered it. Like I've usually taken my clients for granted and been like, yeah, I get it. Like you're not used to eating this much. It's gonna feel different. But it certainly could be mental. But what I do find is the second statement you made is super true. As soon as they're like, wow, I feel better, I slept better, sex drive is back, body just changed, work is better, relationships better, I'm in. Like, well, then the appetite comes. And it could be timing based on like metabolism catching up, or it could just be like, I see the benefit of this. I am going to feel hungrier because of the benefit of this. Um, and then weightlifting for women, like, oh my God, you nailed it. If I could drag my wife in here right now and put her on display, I would do it. She is this like 5'4". I almost said three. She'd be so mad. 5'4" little powerhouse, just like filled with muscle. And transparently, like she's got more muscle on her body than I think the large majority of women care to have. But she loves it. I mean, she's a coach just like me. She understands how that's going to play into her long-term life, and she loves how it makes her look. And like in agreement with her and in agreement with you, this might actually be, I was thinking about it when you were talking, this might actually be really helpful for somebody to hear and give them permission. Because I think that so many women are stuck in a box of like, I need to be small to be worthy. I need to be small to be attractive. And look, like coming from a guy's perspective, I find it so attractive when a girl has a decent amount of muscle on their body. Like
Mhm.
it changes the shape of them, it changes how they walk and present themselves. And like I just think it looks incredible. So from an aesthetic point of view, it's amazing. Also from like a functionality and longevity point of view, it's priceless.
Yeah.
So, and then the last piece, here we go. I nailed this. I got all the points. The last piece, like women think that if they get in the gym and lift heavy, they're just going to blow up. Like, look, you're not just going to sneeze and get jacked. Trust me. I'm a guy with 10 times the amount of testosterone and different levels of hormones than you. And I can't even get in the gym and get jacked. And I work my face off. Like at this point, I've been working out for, I don't know, 16 years. And I've gained a good bit of muscle. I went from 140 to 200 pounds. But that's 16 years of not stopping.
Hmm.
You're not going to get jacked. And if you do gain muscle, you have a different build than men. Like you're not just going to present like us.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm getting off my soapbox.
Well, also, bodybuilding competitions, those women are tanned, they're dehydrated, and in the process of getting that much muscle, they're eating in excess and they're
Mm.
getting body fat on them so that they can grow the muscle, and then they cut it, and then they go excess so they can build more muscle, and then they cut. You don't see the transition where they're fluffy because they have to build muscle and they need the fat to do that. But you also don't see the hormones getting completely jacked up in the bodybuilding,
No.
and when you're just working out to get your bones strong, to keep your ligaments moving, to keep, muscle, and you want to grow muscle, you want to be toned because that's what's going to that allows you to eat more, that allows you to move better, that allows you to keep up with the busy lifestyle that we all have. It allows you to be energized. And having more muscle means that you're able to pick up your grandkids. You can probably still pick up your teenager and carry him on your back if you're working out, and do all of that. But you can also keep up with your husband who just has more muscle naturally. And but getting jacked is almost impossible. People they work out for years. And the jacked look is just most of the time dehydration. And then as soon as they start eating again, the muscles disappear, and I think that a lot of people don't understand that process. And then some people, like I have a friend who, when she weightlifts, she gets, the V shape and the big
Mhm.
thighs and all of that. And she struggles with that, but everybody's body is different and you just have to be strong, but she also was purposefully training to be in a like a deadlift competition,
Well, there you go.
so like again, once she wasn't doing that anymore, she just stayed toned and she wasn't getting bulky training for a specific competition that requires bulk. And I think that just a lot of people, again, they equate worthy with small. And like my husband loves me at my size. He's like, you don't need to lose any weight. Like, I love your curves. I love all of it. And I'm like, no, this is not staying. But I think a lot of people just think that if we're not small, we're not worthy. And that's just not true. And you might actually be small by eating more and having hormones balanced. And so I want to talk about this before I let you go. I do want to touch on hormone replacement therapy just because for about 3 years, my testosterone has been nil. And and so I've done hormone replacement therapy and it has been life changing for me. By having testosterone, I've been able to build muscle. I've been sleeping better. I have more energy. The brain fog is gone. And then I know you've started that journey. And I just want to, like, if you've done all the foundational things first and you're still not there, get tested. And then let's talk hormone replacement therapy really quick.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really only going to talk about my experience because, like I said in the beginning, like
Right.
I'm not the hormone guy. I'll never be the hormone guy and I'll never act like it. So, what I can share is that a million times with my clients and ladies in my free community, they've come to me and they've been like, Joe, I'm in menopause. My hormones are jacked up. And that is the reason why I can't lose weight. And I'll say, great. Well, you might be right, but show me your consistency over our foundational things over the last 30 days. And if they can't point to that, I don't give them the right to point the finger at hormones,
Mhm.
right? And so if they do that for 30 days and there's no change at all in anything, well, guess what? We got to dive deeper. And there's people I can refer to that do that, and they're welcome on my team because that's what makes us well-rounded.
Right.
So that's the case for everybody around me. For my case, I mean, God, you guys just heard me talk for an hour about the foundational stuff. I do the foundational stuff. I've done it. I'm 31 now. I've done it since I was 22. At 22, I got my blood drawn and my testosterone was I remember this like it was yesterday, 330 nanograms per deciliter, which if you look at the scale for men, it's roughly 300 to 1100 nanograms per deciliter. And so is it in the healthy range? Yes, but it's 30 nanograms per deciliter higher than the lowest possible number. And so is it healthy? I don't think so. Is
Right.
it optimal? Certainly not. And
Mm-mm.
so recently, like for the past year, I've been feeling kind of crappy, low energy. had trouble focusing on stuff, kind of what you described, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I work in other businesses too, not just my diet detox business. And we got connected with a hormone clinic that we're helping grow. And so I reached out and was like, hey, would you guys mind drawing my blood? And it turns out that now I was at 287 nanograms per deciliter. So not just like in the healthy range, but suboptimal. I am outside of the healthy range.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we did is they started giving me Clomid, which is two medications in one. It's zuclomiphene and enclomiphene. And I don't know how long I've been on it, like 3 or 4 weeks. Um, Generally, it's going to take like 5 to 8 to be 100%, but I can already notice I feel better. I present better. I focus. I literally got accused of being on the limitless pill, like the movie about an hour ago. And I can tell you that the foundational shit did not, in fact, work for me in that manner. And
Mm-hmm.
so that means it might not for you either. That means it didn't for Marian.
Yeah.
But before we ever get there, we've got to give the foundational stuff time.
Yeah. That's true for everything, right? But especially when it comes to hormones, hormones are just such a delicate balance. And yeah, I'm not a hormone specialist either, but I will say, like, after you, and I say more than 30 days, I say give it 3 to 6 months, just because we have to get the nutrient stores up, cells have to turn over. So I'm even more cautious. I'm like, let's give it 3 months and get some time for the inflammation to go down and all of that. Again, I'm in the chronic illness world, so it's a little bit different, but I'm like, let's give it some solid time. And then, if things still aren't doing, let's move the needle. And the other thing I want to stress, especially if you're younger, a lot of times it can be fixed with a little bit of support. The
Mhm.
body just kind of needs the brain needs a little tickle. It's what one of my docs calls it. My hormone doc actually calls it is a brain tickle. And that can, especially in your younger years, reset it. But also we have so much going against us now. We have all these toxins. We have birth control in the water. We have like all of these things, microplastics. I was just reading a study this morning about how microplastics and they're in everything, right? But they're estrogenic. And so they cling to our estrogen
Yeah.
receptors. And I'm sure that estrogen is the only one that's been studied, but I cannot imagine it doesn't impact all the other hormones too, And so there's a lot going on. But if you're doing the foundational stuff, again, that clears the smoke so we can see the fire.
Yep.
But also there's studies out there over and over again that 70 to 80% of all outcomes are on us, like on these foundational things. So before you go trying a magic pill or trying anything, give this 3 to 6 months of just consistency, learning what to eat, learning what, 100, or 100 grams of protein per day, or 1 gram per ideal body weight, and eat your vegetables and exercise and focus on your sleep. And sometimes you have to kind of start with one and then build from there. I don't think overhauling your life is necessarily sustainable, but work with somebody who can guide you and what's going to be the most important, what's going to get you the most bang for your buck initially, and go from there. But, perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, it's extra challenging because your hormones are all over the map and you feel completely out of control. And I love that you give women things that are in their control, that do move the needle. Like it may not necessarily, it's not going to stop menopause, but it can make sure you're feeling good through it and mitigating a lot of the effects that can be detrimental.
Absolutely. Yeah, you nailed it. And I'll end with this. None of this is hard because look, like my life is crazy. Marian, I'm sure your life is crazy. If this stuff was hard, we would be failing at it left and right. We've simply found a way to take this and make it simple, enjoyable, and part of our life. And because we've done that, we can do it without thinking.
Yep.
And guess what? I'll tell you what, like you guys heard from me in the very beginning, since 13, trust me, long before then, I have not been good at shit. I have to work hard for the stuff I get. But I've found a way to make this simple. And so if I can, that means everybody else can too.
Yeah. Thank you again for joining me. I would love to have you back and take people deeper. I feel like we just barely scratched the surface and there's so much more to share.
Let's do it. I'd be happy to.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you found this episode helpful, would you do me a favor and help others find it by leaving a review, sharing a screenshot on social media, or sharing the link with a friend? By you sharing what you've learned, others are able to find this podcast and join our community. Be sure to check out my website, www.roadtolivingwhole.com, for over 160 delicious recipes, a variety of meal plans, and a blog packed full of even more healthy living tips. If you'd like to learn more about how to work with me as your coach, you can schedule a free consult through www.roadtolivingwhole.com/health-coaching/. Until next time, friend. Bye.